Hey now, cats, we're back again on the Balls from Ellwood show. Today I have two very special guests, and if you know Balls, you know I love these guys. You might know them from the Kids in the Hall, their music, their comedy writing, acting. The reason they're here today, though, is we have something very special to celebrate. They have a new album called Valley of Song. They have a band called Mouth Congress. I've been listening to it all week. I fucking love it. It's a banger. It's got something for everybody. Let's give it up for the great Paul Bellini and Scott Thompson. How you gentlemen doing today? I can't wait to talk with this new. I want to say I've been loving it. There's a little bit for everybody, man. Like you got you got rock, you got spoken word, you even have a little
Mhm.
bit of country, some folk,
Mhm.
all over the place. I love it so much. I know my audience is gonna love it so much. I can't recommend it more. So if you don't mind telling me, I'm just gonna get right into it. I'd like to hear about the fruition of how Mouth Congress came together, and I want to take time to go track for track and hear about the ideas
Oh,
of
okay.
songs came from this album.
Okay. Paul, why don't you talk about the Genesis? Uh,
Genesis was
Genesis.
back in 1984. I rented a beatbox, and I was living in a big house. And my sister's boyfriend had his guitar at the house. And Scott came over one day, and the three of us jammed out about 35 songs. They were all short and
Mhm.
silly, but
And we should say some of them balls were about our balls.
were about
So
balls.
so yeah, that's why we're on the show.
And it was such a good experience. We just kept doing it. And about a year later, we started to do live shows. It became a thing. You know, it just starts off as a lark and it becomes a thing. And then eventually you realize, well, we're good at some aspect of it and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to stop, you know?
Yeah, I think it was more than a group. It was more like a group of friends that made stuff as a way of hanging out rather than a
Yeah.
band. And then we sort of became a band because Paul and I never thought of ourselves as musicians. I didn't really think of myself as anything. I was so unformed. I was figuring out what I could do. But we would get high, we would improvise, we'd make songs, and then we kind of went, oh, maybe we're a band because the people, most of our friends were musicians, so that made it very easy.
Well, that actually leads me to my next question. You actually have a really good band backing you. Like,
Yes.
how did you meet these cats, and how did they get together, and how did this new album come to be?
Well, they're just friends.
Oh, really?
The originals, the new guys, they were mostly. I mean, when we first started writing this project, it was me, Paul, Gord, and Rob, and then Ryan, and the only outsider was Ryan, and he came in through. Was it through Gord, Paul?
Yeah, I was Gord's friend.
Yeah, it was through restaurants, I think, right? Like
No,
cooking
they
and
actually played in a band together.
yeah, and then so that's how it happened. We were just like Paul. Rob was went out with Paul's sister. Gord and Paul grew up together in Timmins. Tom King was just a friend of ours. Brian Hiltz from York. We all met at York, really.
Well, let's get right into the songs here because I there's so many entertaining songs in this album, and I'm curious about how they came to be. Let's start with the very first track, "Honk."
Yes,
I mean, it's obviously about truck drivers, but like,
yes, it is.
how did that? What was the reasoning behind that?
Okay. Well, I mean, that song was written at the end, at the tail end of the pandemic in Toronto's seventh lockdown, and at the point when I think the country was fracturing. And I know myself personally, I was breaking. And when the truckers first announced that they were doing what they were doing, it felt to me like the cavalry were coming to rescue us from this isolation.
Hmm.
And so I got swept up in it. And the song itself was just we started improvising as we always did to write the song. And then there was a hook. And we were always looking for a hook. And it was that hook where we changed from, oh, when we go, oh, that seemed to be it. And then we just built the song around it. It's basically our meth, our MO in this album, as with everything we do, is we just take people's stories and we illustrate them. We don't comment on them. We just say, this is what happened. These are the people. These are the characters. These are their lives. Take a look.
I think that's what I like the most about this album. It is very theater of the mind, and each track you do kind of you both are very very good at like telling a story with words, and it's very awesome. I as with Booker, I have to know about how the Chimp song came to be. In fact, I'll be at work and I'm like ooh, 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 look at me like what the
Yeah.
fuck are you doing, dude?
Well, that again, the same thing that just happened from an improv that had a great hook, and the hook was that kind of
With
chant.
the hooker.
Yeah, a booker with a hooker. It was that line, a booker for a hooker with a chimp. And that was it. So we built the entire song around that one line.
And that's all there was to it, huh?
Yeah, because also the when with writing this album, it came out of a very I personally a very difficult play time for all of us, most of the world, to be honest. I mean, it came out of the pandemic, and for me personally, it came out of a very difficult time with the Kids in the Hall making our reboot,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm going to try to be very. I'm gonna gingerly edge into this area, but the censorship was extremely difficult for us, and I personally felt it very deeply. And after that, I went, you know what? I want to make something that is just for us, that nobody can say, no, you can't talk about that. No, you can't do that. And so the whole thing was, we're going to do whatever we want. We're not going to have that censor in our brain. And so that's what it was. I guess what we wanted to make was pure art. So that's what we did.
Hmm. I love the next song too, Which Gabor. I mean, I grew up watching Jojo on Green Acres, and but I mean,
Eva.
I mean, actually, that actually makes me wonder too. Do you two
Yes.
have a process when you get together to write, or do you just like run ideas back and forth to each other and then get together and kind of flesh everything out? What's your process when you're writing?
Well, it's all different processes, really. I mean, we improvise stuff together. We work on it together. Sometimes one of us will go and write lyrics, and then we come together and agree on them. The only thing that is very important and is always part of the process is that we have to agree on every word.
So, how did the Gabor song come to be?
Oh, Paul,
Oh,
you talk about that. Yeah.
we were just fooling around in the studio. We had a track that our friend Brian Hiltz recorded, and I don't even know what the inspiration was. We just started singing about the Gabor sisters,
Yeah.
and that was like back in 2011.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
now we started taking seriously. So we rewrote the song to expand upon the idea of what was it about the Gabor sisters that fascinated us as little gay boys,
Yeah.
and how there's a parallel with the Kardashians now, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I never really realized that, but yeah, I guess there really kind of is.
They're very, very similar. It's the mother and her beautiful daughters. How can I monetize their beauty and youth? And you know, that's I think the connection. And they're basically real gold diggers in a way. I mean, and but we don't judge any of our characters. But it's interesting because you said Jaja in Green Acres. It's Eva.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez. Oh man,
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed.
That's why we wrote the song so that people would know. No, it was Eva in Green Acres.
Oh, there's too many for me to even count. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we also like the idea of taking it's a hard song. Like it's a real, it's a punk song. It's a hard driving song, and yet it has the silliest topic, and
I,
that makes
I
it
have
comic.
this
You know.
is a very funny album, by the way. I have to say.
Thank you. Yeah.
Uh, okay, let me move on here to Gerbil, which I think that's kind of probably
Oh.
pretty self-explanatory. But I mean, how did it how did that come to be?
Well, Scott made fun of me. He said my spirit animal was a gerbil.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were it was in the last album when we were working on this tune that we'd had for a while from Tom King, and we wanted to make it a different song. And Paul was writing this song about his spirit animal, and it just did not seem like Paul's spirit animal. And I did. I made fun of him. You're more of a gerbil. And that's where it came from. And then we just thought, what about taking this obscene sexual practice that gay men apparently used to do and write it from the point of view of the poor gerbil. And again, very much we're always about, I think in hindsight, I realized this, our characters never see themselves as victims. Even the gerbil doesn't see himself as a victim.
Yeah, he's almost kind of a hero in the song.
Yes, he is. He's been chosen by his community.
He's born to
yeah, to be sacrificed to the ass god, because that's happened before, and every time one of them disappears into the god's ass, right? Things are better for the gerbil family. He stops killing them, right? And until it comes, another drought comes along. So yeah, it's sort of like, the old, they used to have in certain cultures, they would sacrifice a virgin to the volcano. So that's kind of it. And she'd be very proud, like, oh my God, I'm gonna save my village.
I'm fulfilling my purpose in life.
Yeah. Once again, it's all about characters finding purpose.
Okay, how about Magnanimous? I really can't put a pin on this one very, very well.
Well, we've been improvising another song, and our friend Paul Agnew used the word magnanimous in the lyric, which blew my mind because it's such a weird word to use in a rock song. And then later on, when we wrote this track, we thought, why not make the whole thing about magnanimous, being magnanimous? And we wrote it in '85, and when we recorded it, this time we didn't change a single thing. We just kept it completely intact.
Yeah, it's the only one like that.
It's about being nice, being fun.
Yeah. Being magnanimous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I guess in a way it's kind of, the album is very magnanimous, I think. I think it really is. This is the canvas of humanity, isn't it? Weird and wonderful and bewitching and
yeah.
I mean, yeah, everybody has a reason for why they do what they do. It doesn't really make sense to anybody but that person. And I guess that's our album. Like, look at all these people doing ridiculous things. It's not funny.
Yeah.
It all comes together though, like so well, and it all kind of flows back to back evenly and makes like one humongous magnanimous thing.
Yeah. It's definitely, I wouldn't know. I don't know if the album has a theme, but it definitely they all do seem to fit.
Score a goal.
Oh, that's a very personal song. I think that's about being somebody who's very talented at what they do, but the world can only see one thing. And in this case, it's the fact that he's gay, and they can't really see past it. And there's many ways. There's lots of things that you can. It could be being a different color than the rest of the folks. It could be a different, sexual orientation. It could be having a different language. There's many ways to be separate from your community. And it's just that's basically it, about a person who thinks, I'm so good at what I do and I work at it constantly, and yet they'll never truly see me as great. And even when I save the day, they're still not going to see it. And you have to accept that. So there's a kind of a sadness to that song. I think there's a melancholy to that. So yeah, so that's a pretty personal song.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I do feel like a lot of these songs, underneath the comedy, do have an underlying seriousness sometimes. I mean, as a lot, like both of you. I mean, did you put a lot of like personal things into these underneath the comedy? Because you said you did with this song, and it feels like there's a couple other songs that kind of feel the same way. Is that true?
Yes. I mean, I don't think it would be any good if we didn't. And I also think that all comedy has underneath it sadness, or even like there can't really be comedy unless there's a target. So the idea that you can have comedy that's kind is insane. It's insane.
Absolutely.
And because nothing can be funny unless there's a target. It can be yourself. It can be a practice that you don't like. It could be a person. It can be many, many, many things, but there has to be a target. So
I
Yes.
think I think that's what I like the most about comedy, and like I think some of the best comedy has always been a reflective mirror to the atrocious things going on in society, and they always point out just how the absurdities of like all the bad things going on. So I feel like that song does a very good job of that. A lot of this stuff and does, and I think that's why this is really going to resonate with people. So. But that being said, let's go into in the papers. I love the whole country feel of the song. I love the song with the murderers and rapers. I don't know why, but that makes me laugh every time. But
Well, it's one of the best rhymes, I think, in the whole album.
it really is. But like,
It's,
I mean, was you just, where did that come from? Was you just looking at the papers and you seen like how people become sensationalized in the media, or how did that come to be?
I sort of have to do this one, don't I, Paul?
You have to do it. It's all yours.
Well, it's true. That's the only song that's totally true.
Really?
Yes, this is that is yes. When I was 16, I was in a high school shooting. The boy behind me did shoot up my school.
Oh my God.
So that's the only one that's 100% true. So but again, so the turn at the end when it suddenly becomes, it goes, oh, it's about being in a rock club and getting the paper. It's like, oh, it's about a blizzard, it's about a rabbit. But no, it's so really what it's about is be careful what you wish for.
Hmm.
So it's about my first brushes with fame, and the one experience that has marked me for the rest of my life. So this is something, yeah, this is about one of my wounds
Wow.
that I never ever get over, that I constantly return to.
See, I
So
never got that from that. I did it's. I mean,
I know you
it's so
probably just
fun.
couldn't believe
It's
that,
very
you couldn't
deep.
imagine this could be real. But yeah,
No,
it's
it's so crazy and over the top. I couldn't even believe it would be real.
it's real.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry you had to go through that.
It's all right. It's okay. It's a long time ago, and everybody goes through things.
Well, okay, let's move on to Walk It Off. How did that come to be? Hmm.
Well, one day I was teaching a comedy class and somebody said something about being on their meds or being off their meds. And I asked offhandedly, I said, "Ugh, how many people in this class are on meds?" And every single one of them put up their hands.
Every single one.
Yeah, this is about 3 or 4 years ago. And I was kind of in shock
What's
because
that?
you just think of how pervasive anti-anxiety medication is nowadays, how it's handed out like candy.
Mm.
And it kind of depressed me because back in our way to deal with anxiety and depression was simply to, keep busy, get some air, do like distract yourself and do something positive with your
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
And this strikes me as a generation that
Yeah.
just takes pills to solve every problem.
Mhm.
And so the song really came from that.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. I think it's a catastrophe. I think that antidepressants are a catastrophe for society. I even look at like what happened to my school when I was young, and after the shooting, no one went on antidepressants.
And let's be honest, Brain Candy was about
Well,
the
our,
same
yeah,
thing.
our movie, our great film
Yeah.
is. I think we were way ahead of the game.
I was
I
just
think
gonna say
people
that movie's
still have
way
a.
ahead of its time.
I think people still have a hard time looking at Brain Canyon, going, "Holy shit, these guys were talking about big pharma." And look at what just happened to our society the last few years. So, yeah, I mean, this is probably going to be a controversial position for Paul and I, but I agree with Paul 100%. I think it's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
I actually agree too, and my family, a lot of my family has suffered from mental illness, and I'll be honest with you, over decades, I've watched like the degradation of them. It doesn't seem like it's gotten them any better. It seems like if anything, it's created more problems. So I mean,
Well, yeah, and I mean, let's just say that there's high school shootings haven't gone down, have they?
no, in fact,
No,
it's sadly to the point where you see about it now, and it's so the norm that like you don't even really have a reaction
no,
anymore.
no. A lot of
That's
them seem to
bad.
be. A
That's
lot of
really
them seem
bad.
to be on antidepressants. So I think it's something that is worth looking into.
Absolutely. How about masks? Is that kind of like a spoken word kind of thing? It's really cool. It's kind of a really cool break in the middle of the album, and
Mhm.
for like, and I really liked like the whole kind of spoken word element to it. I mean, was that intentional?
Well, should I do it?
Yeah, you start.
So Scott's brother Dean had written a poem that we liked, and at one point, very early on, we talked about using it as a piece on the album. And I thought back to, remember Patti Smith when she did the Horses album, and she multi-tracked her own poetry, and I thought that's kind of a cool thing. So I remember we were in studio, and I told Scott, "Why don't you try performing the poem?" And he did. We did 3 recordings of it. One where he's screaming, one where he's sort of like talking lower, more serious, all this stuff. And then we forgot about it entirely.
Yeah.
About a month later, we were jamming. Me and Gord and Ryan were coming up with some ideas for songs. And Gord loves all that dirgy
Yeah.
metal stuff, like the Swans and stuff. And they really wanted to do a heavy, heavy track. I thought, well, why the hell not? We're looking for variety. And so we recorded this track that was just all distortion and very little melody. You couldn't really put a vocal on it. But then I remembered the poem, and I thought, oh my God, the poem would fit perfectly with this, because poems aren't like lyrics. They're recited in a different way. And we matched it up together, and it was kind of a miracle. So this track kind of happened in a Frankenstein kind of manner, in a way. But it's again, it's a very personal thing. It's about the Thompson family, and we're doing a video for it, which we use all their Super 8 from when they were
super cool.
Yeah, this is another I guess this is another of the most personal songs. And I was against it because I thought I didn't want to do it because I didn't think there was anything funny in it. Even in the papers, it may be not funny, but it has a very black comedy turn. It's not comedy, but I mean, it's at least, but Mass, there was nothing. Plus, it was the only time that we didn't do the lyrics, because it's the lyrics are by my brother, and my brother committed suicide when I was younger. So that's so that would I read that poem at his funeral. So that was where that came, and Paul convinced me that it worked, and I was like, we can't. I didn't want to put it on the album, but then they all convinced me, and the musicians wanted to do it, and I thought, well, I can't take that away from the musicians. I mean, it really is sonically different than anything else.
Yeah,
and now we've made a video, and the video is really cool because we used my father's Super 8. Because my father was like a Paul Bellini of his day, where he got the first Super 8 camera. He shot our family constantly, and he fancied himself as a cinematographer. So he always had these crazy things where he would have all of us line up and run towards the camera and peel off. And so we made this video of it. But I've really grown to like the song, even though there's nothing funny in it. But that's about what Mask is. Yeah, man.
It doesn't have to be though, because like I said, you have so many different styles and genres, and it's it all kind of blends together, and like that's all like kind of like a nice middle point of the album, and it's very, everything doesn't have to be funny. That's actually
no, yeah, I guess we kind of realized that, like, because we just submitted the album for Juno Awards in Canada,
nice.
And we went back and forth over, is it a comedy album, is it a musical album? It's an album.
Yeah.
And it's funny at times, but not always funny. But the music didn't have to be that good. I think that's the interesting thing. That's like, it's far better musically than it should be. I mean, which makes it a real musical album. And it's funnier than a real album should be. But there have been funny albums over the years. So, yeah.
So was Scott. This time we actually rehearsed a lot because we did all the songs live. And honestly, if you listen to our first album, Waiting for Henry, it's almost all improv or
entirely,
like really quick takes.
Yeah.
With this record, we actually built it song by song and did them live, and rehearsed a lot. So when we went into the studio, there was a very clear idea of what the musicians had to do, and they're pros. They like to be
pros,
as good as possible.
And it was a wonderful window. I don't think we could make that album today because it came out of the pandemic when people had a lot of spare time, and there was this kind of reservoir that had built up in all of us, and it exploded in this album. But it took 3 years to put this whole thing together.
Wow, I would have never guessed. That's something.
Yeah.
What about synesthesia? And I knew I was gonna mess this up. Synesthesia.
Synesthesia. Well, I mean, that's an interesting one song.
Is that about being with a woman?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that a true story too?
Well,
kind
yeah.
of, kind of true. Yeah. And it's just all about how sexuality is not black and white. And of course, you're mostly one thing, but it's all about how the idea that you can never say never, really. And it's all about how how your life can be just thrown like I'm gay. I can't think this woman's attractive.
Mm-hmm.
But and then it's also about how sometimes in your life you don't become synesthetic, but there's sometimes things get mixed up in your brain. I don't know how to explain it. Like sometimes I don't know. um yeah, I don't know how to explain that. Just sometimes you're not quite yourself. And
We were interested in that, in the concept of synesthesia for some reason. It was a newspaper article
yeah.
came out around that time.
And I kept thinking, like, am I synesthetic? Like, do I see? Like, I mean, when I think of an orange, it has to be. I think of it as five, or there's certain things that I think of as colors, but it's not true synesthesia. Um, but yeah, so that's it. And then we made two pieces to it. We made the first part, which is kind of a comedy sketch, and then the second part, which is that really very pretty song. But that's really what it's about. So it's all about like, suddenly a woman isn't a woman. It's like, oh my God, she's no longer an orange. She's an apple. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And
Yeah.
I do like the I do like the the genre change like in mid song. It's
Well,
really
that's even what the
it's a
song's
very
about.
beautiful
Like, I mean,
song.
how can a song be a sketch and music, right?
And it's a
So in a
really
way,
good
the
blend
song
of
is
both.
an example of
It
synesthesia.
transitions very nicely. It's a very beautiful song. Mm.
Yeah, so even the song is like that. You go, it's not traditional. That's not a traditional song, and we included it together. Like we didn't make the talking parts separate. We put them together and said, "This is the song," and that's kind of radical. Like that doesn't make sense, but it's almost like it's a song, a section in the album that was just lifted out of a musical.
It does kind of feel that way now that you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see here about we got about 6 or 7 more songs to talk about. Let's get the girl on the mountain.
Oh, Paul, you take that.
Our friend Brian Hiltz wrote this silly song, and it reminded me of the Alps for some reason. And we were talking about just Heidi, I guess, and Nazi Germany and how they dealt with Switzerland, which of course was neutral territory. Just all these, a lot of silly things coming out at once. And we built this song, and I did the first version of the lyric, and it told the story. And then Scott came on, we rebuilt it,
I
and
made fun of him again.
and then just got Stuart Borden to figure it out on piano, and again, looking for something very different for the album. And this one is, very piano heavy rather
It's
than
our Billy Joel song. Does that make sense?
No, it's funny. Whenever I was hearing the piano, it did kind of remind me Billy Joel-esque. Like I was like, yeah, that's not a bad thing. That's definitely a good thing.
And again, it's a silly song about a very serious thing, you know. And that also has a video. We have 7 videos that we've made. It's crazy.
Also, it's another song about women. We write a lot about women for gay guys.
A lot.
I did kind of notice that on this album.
I know. It's about, I mean, it's barely gay. Like it's just
no gay love songs.
No gay, no. No, it's a lot about women. Yeah. So
I mean, you can always write a song about balls if you'd like.
We do Testicle Delight. Have you not heard Testicle Delight?
The first album.
Delight. Check out our first album, Waiting for Henry. Is Testicle Delight on that? I think it is.
Yeah. I remember the first album. It's not about me though.
It's truly about big, gorgeous balls.
Look, I'm gonna rededicate that song. I'm gonna tell everybody you guys wrote that for me. So.
When you go on Stern next time and you ask and you mention this, say you should play Testicle Delight.
You know what? The next time I call and I get on, I promise you I'll do this.
I think he'll like that song.
I'm gonna suggest it. He can be kind of cranky though, but I'll definitely try to crib art it. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do one more, and then I'm gonna have to resend you another invite because I have the white trash version of Zoom, and I don't want to get cut off. I want to make sure we get this all done and in its entirety. But how about Blither? Is that
Blither is little. That was made of. I went. Oh, I was in Halifax visiting our friend Brian Hiltz, and we said, let's just do a little session one because we would always just get together and do sessions where we would like improvise. He would play music, and then I would like improvise lyrics to it. And during one of the breaks, we went out and got high, and we came back in, and I went off on this little rant, and then I went, "Oh, that's really good pot," and that was it. And then Paul put it together with the music, and it became a song. I mean, so that's the one it's pretty ballsy to call
I see what you did
that
there.
a song, but it has music to it, so it is a song. That's all it is.
All right, let's talk about hot girls. How did the track Hot Girls come to be?
Well, obviously, Paul and I see ourselves as very hot girls. Once again, another song about women. Again, this is, I think, inspired by the pandemic. It was just the idea that what would you do at the end of 2 years of isolation? And because in Canada, they went very hard. And these two young ladies that had worked very hard to keep their bodies together. And in fact, they thought, let's get sexier during the pandemic. And I think a lot of it was a kind of an homage to how young people were really cheated out of these amazingly important years for this stupid flu. And so that was it. I don't know. Just we're gay men, so we like to think of ourselves as hot girls.
I like the song Gallivanting. How did that come to be? I just even just as that even as a title was kind of funny.
Well, it was the same session we did masks. It was I asked the boys just to improvise in studio, and Gord came up with this incredible riff, and then it was good, but they wanted to re-record it and like actually structure it a little better. So we did that again. And gallivanting was the word I came up with. I just thought it's like Scott says, it's sort of like my life philosophy,
Yeah.
keeping endlessly busy just to avoid the horror of dying. You know what I mean? Like just always do stuff. So you're always, it's as simple as that, really.
Yeah.
I have to say, as I get older, it is very relatable. I do, I mean, I do think about that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, who's the Star Trek fan? Because "Beam Me Up" is clearly a Star Trek song. I mean,
neither of us.
I mean, yeah, neither of us are Trekkies. No, I mean, I love.
But we grew up when it was actually on television the first time. I was 7 or 8 years old, and it was on TV. And of course, it has a profound effect because it was in color.
Yeah,
and this fantastic television show that was just almost ideal for my demographic, which was young kid who likes fantasy. And it's hard not to attach erotics meaning to a lot of it in a way.
Well, it was a very horny. Like I'm the same. I love science fiction, but Star Trek was a very horny show. Like I mean, every week
he was banging somebody on every planet.
He was constantly on the prowl, and it was fantastic, and it was horny, and those costumes showed a lot, and everybody was sexy, and that's and this song we improvised I think we improvised that at Warren's place, Paul, the very first iteration of it.
Yeah, well, it was hardly an idea. We really developed it later.
Yeah, but it was just that tune was so pretty.
Well, I think what it is the phrase "beam me up."
Yeah,
as kind of a way of saying "love me,"
yeah. And it's got a very interesting structure. Like it's got a very it's not structured at all like a regular song. Like the verse goes on forever before you get the chorus.
Yeah,
like it's incredible. Like you go, what is there a chorus? And there is, but we didn't care about those kind of rules. But it's a true duet for the both of us, that one.
You know, you do complement each other nicely. That is another thing I like about the album. Like you do kind of go back and forth, and
we do.
You guys sound really good together, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we sound probably better together than alone.
Well, I want to ask you about Evangeline because I have a guess about what it's about, and I mean, I being a horror fan, I mean, is this song about a werewolf? Hmm.
Oh yeah.
I really like that. I like that element to this. It kind of this is one of my favorite tracks in the album, actually. Hmm.
Yeah.
You seen the video?
Where can I see these?
Oh, you haven't seen the video?
Is it on your Instagram?
It's our website. Go to our website, mouthcongress.com.
Yeah.
I
You
didn't
can
realize all this stuff was up there.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's our first video release, Evangeline. It's a huge one. It's 6.5 minutes, isn't it?
no,
Six
about
minutes? Five
yeah.
and a half minutes. Yeah.
Is it okay if I post links to these videos?
Oh my God, are you kidding? Yes, yes.
Yeah, I definitely want to check those out and have everybody else check these out.
Yeah,
So.
Evangeline it's about a werewolf, or as they say in Canada, in French Canada, loup-garou, which is right.
Oh.
That's the word for werewolf in Quebecois. And when I was a little boy, Paul and I are both from Northern Ontario originally. When I was a kid, my mother had a lady that would come, a cleaning lady that would come and help her sometimes, and her name was Momo, and she only spoke French. And I guess when I was little, I understood her, and she would tell me stories. And she told me one story about the loup-garou, which was the werewolf, and that always stuck with me.
But also at the time, Scott was making a horror movie in Timmins called My Animal.
Yeah,
it's also basically about a werewolf thing, right?
Yeah,
well, you never see the werewolf, do you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't.
She's a werewolf. Yeah, yeah.
No.
She comes from a werewolf family. So I was making this werewolf movie in Northern Ontario, where in Paul's hometown, Timmins, and I was going back and forth like 10-hour, 12-hour drives in the dead of winter. It was near the end of the pandemic, but people were still in lockdown, so everybody was wearing masks. And that was one of the very first songs. And so I remember the first time, and we would rehearse in my living room, and I'd come back from, another, week in Timmins, and that was where it came from. It's absolutely about a werewolf. And it's kind of the video, when you see the video, it's kind of, it's the Red Riding Hood story, but we switch it where Red Riding Hood is the villain.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
you kind of get that like from the song, like visually in your mind. So that's
yes,
that's really cool.
The werewolf is actually the victim. He's just doing what a werewolf does. She's the one that weaponizes his violence to get what she wants.
That is super cool. Yeah, I was kind of, yeah, I got to definitely check that video out. So I'll post those links too, so people could check it out. And last but not least, this song makes me almost piss my pants every time. Musical Cake. The banter between both of you is so goddamn funny. I can't stand it. I mean, is this just you turning on the recorder and you guys just kind of cutting it up between each other?
No, it's written.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's just really. Oh, Paul, you talk about the music.
Well, the music was just something we jammed while you were in England.
Yeah.
Because we were using Scott's apartment to still write songs in while he was gone. And the band came up with this little riff. I thought it was very nice. I didn't know what to do with it, but I knew we had to include it on the album because it was so pretty. And I think I came up there to be like a rap battle. That it was
nothing. Yeah, it was all about, I don't remember what it was.
It would give us a chance to actually talk to each other as the people we are, as like Kids in the Hall guys, and also just our weird chemistry as friends and as creative people.
Yeah.
And also it was funny. It's just
it's just two friends taking the piss out of each other.
I was just gonna say it. When I hear this song, it reminds me of like how you probably two are together all the time, like cutting it up. Is that true? Mm.
Well, a lot,
yeah. And I don't think, we don't spare each other. Definitely, we don't spare each other's feelings, and that's how the Kids in the Hall were. You can't spare each other's feelings if you're writing comedy. Yeah, so that's basically it. How two people that are fun, you can say whatever you want to the person. If it's said with love, you can say anything, right? If you're going for a laugh, it's all right. That's my ethos. If you're trying for a laugh, it's okay.
Well, I have to say, there you have it. I mean, I want everybody to go out and get Valia's song. Probably one of my favorite albums I've heard in a very long time. Largely because I love these two folks, and I'll be posting links. I'll be posting videos. Everybody go get the album, and I can't thank you both for coming on the show, talking about these songs, and I love you guys. Peace and love. Thank you for doing my show, and I hope you have a great week. Love you. Peace and love.
Thank you.
Thanks. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you, sir.
Have a good
Bye,
day.
Paul. Bye, Scott.
Bye.
Bye-bye.